I said today we are going to start with our new module, that is budgetary control. The first thing which you have to remember when you hear the word budget is a management control tool. Okay, if you're asked with some of the tools which are used by management for controlling the cost, this is one of the efficient tool that is used by management for controlling the cost as well as for planning for future. Because in our day-to-day life also, see, when maybe some of your parents might be preparing a budget for the month, for the monthly expenses of your family, or maybe you are preparing your budget based on the pocket money which your parents give, or some of you are already working, so maybe based on the salary you earn, you might plan something. All that planning, when we put that into a systematic way, we call that as a budget. Because I prepare my budget, I plan my future activities based on that, so that I will have a better control on my activity. That's a basic idea behind having a budget. In fact, in this context, I would like to suggest that all of us should be going with preparing a budget for every activity. Like as you prepare a timetable for your study timetable before your exams for preparing that, the same way, financial discipline is one of the mandatory thing which every individual need to have. So a budget can help us to bring some kind of financial discipline in our life. So in this context, I'll just show you the definition. A budget is an estimate of future needs. Of course, from a company's perspective, I know that, yes, my company is going to produce 1,000 units, or I'm going to render the following services. And I know that these are the kind of expenses that might incur in future for me. So in order to have a better control in my activities, I estimate my future needs. And then I am going to arrange that in an orderly basis so that I can plan well in advance. Right. So that is why we say that it is an estimate of future activities, okay, prepared and arranged in an orderly manner. And definitely, our budget can be for a definite period, for a stipulated period, maybe for 1 year, maybe quarterly budget, maybe when I am planning for the introduction of a new product. Right, so I will also may prepare a budget exclusively for focusing on this particular action. Right, so my budget definitely will be, it is future oriented, it's an estimate, it is prepared for a definite period. So that's a context of a budget. It's actually a plan of action. Okay, I am going to say that, okay, if the future is like this, if I want to serve 1,000 customers, I know that these are the expenses that will be coming on my way. So in that case, I will have, say, I will have the need with which is associated with my marketing aspect, my rendering of service, like I need so much of resources like human capital, maybe physical infrastructure, all that. So I am planning my expenses. That's the budget in my hand from an organizational perspective. Now, as I said, the primary objective of every budget is to plan for future. It's actually a plan of action. See, suppose if I'm starting a journey without an idea about my destination, I might reach somewhere. And when I reach somewhere, maybe that I'm not satisfied. Maybe that I did not want to come to a place like this. Or it can be a case where I took more time in reaching to that place because I was not planned. I did not have a plan of action. So here, every budget is a plan of action. Okay, now why do I have a plan of action? I want to coordinate all my activities within a firm so that my objectives are achieved in the best possible manner. So that's another objective of a budget. That is, it coordinates my activities, various functional level activities, maybe my production, my no the other activities like selling, marketing, or distribution, or maybe resourcing. All these are coordinated well, and when activities are coordinated well, it is actually the result that I will have better control on my cost factor, and it can help me in reducing by eliminating the unnecessary wastages. So that again is another objective of a budget. And of course, when I'm planning well in advance, I know how to resource my raw materials, or my the aspects, what all aspects I need to continue with my production. So when I'm planning that well in advance, there is no hurry-burry decisions. So it will help me to utilize my resources in the best possible way. Say for example, if there is a fluctuation in the market prices, right? If my the raw material, or maybe my semi-finished material which I require for my production, it is prone to frequent market fluctuations. In that case, if I know that yes, I need so many quintals or so much of raw material of this category A, I can resource it well in advance, looking at the price fluctuation. When it is feasible for me, when it is favorable for me, I can make the purchase and keep it in my warehouse. So that's planning well in advance, so that I will be able to manage it in a better way. So that's why we say that it helps in better utilization of resources, and also in the overall management of the organization. When I know the destination, I know every now and then I can just evaluate whether I have reached to a stage to achieve my objectives on right time. So these are some of the benefits that is associated with planning or drafting a budget for our firm. Okay, now the aspects which we are going to discuss in our today's class is classification of budgets. We said budget is a plan, it is an estimate, it is future oriented, it helps us to design our activities in future, right? So likewise, based on these aspects, primarily budgets can be classified into functional budget, master budget, fixed or flexible budgets, long-term or short-term budgets. So these are the first line. Okay, first primary aspect of classification of budgets. Now, when I ask functions of an organization, you will say planning, organizing, or as you say, portfolio, directing, all these. So the functional budget, when we discuss in a cost accounting context, it depends on the various functions performed by an organization. Like, I might have a sales budget. The most important thing which we are going to learn is a cash budget, right? So it is based on the various functions which is being performed by a firm. So it will have production budget, sales budget, marketing budget, cash budget. All that will be brought under different functions of a firm. In that, the most important thing is, of course, production budget. It talks about planning for the production activities, how much to produce, what should you plan, what are the units, what is the cost associated with the requirement, what type of raw materials, the cost associated. So every minute details, you bring that into a budget. So so ultimately what happens here is, if I am planning for 100 units of a product A, I know exactly what all the things I need before my production, and when do I need the other aspects. Maybe when do I have to go with the packing material, or when I have to go with the other resources that is required to make the product available to the ultimate customer. So my production budget is anticipating many things in advance so that I can plan well in my organization. Likewise, my sales budget. No, some of you might be. You might have been associated with a salesperson, and you might have seen or you might have heard them talking about target. To achieve a target, we have a target, we have to achieve that by the close of this month or maybe by this quarter. So that is actually, the target is something which has come from a budget that's been drafted at the beginning of the quarter or maybe at the beginning of the month. So they say that they're given with a target means there is already a budget that the firm is planning to sell so much of units through the retail outlets or maybe through the wholesale outlets, like that. So the target is the result of a planned budget or maybe a plan of action. So that's why sales budget will be looking into, yes, the target, if my economic conditions are so and so, if there are maybe every firm will be having a contingency plan. But basically, there would be a functional budget which will direct their various activities. Right. Now, I was planning to talk about cash budget because we are going to learn how to do it also. Cash budget, if I say that in one word, it talks about the movement of cash in and out of cash to an organization. So it talks, it will estimate what are the possible receipts for this particular company. It will also make a plan for the kind of payments the firm will have to make in this quarter or maybe in this year. Right? So cash budget is an estimate of the actual receipts and payments of cash in a firm. So that's very important because we know that we have learned from the beginning that the one which decides about the activity, the primary thing that decides about the activity within a firm is availability of fund, money, right? So cash budget is prepared primarily to plan very well the movement of cash within an organization. We will learn there are different methods of preparing a cash budget, but maybe we will concentrate on the receipts and payments method based on your syllabus, but we will discuss the other methods also. And it is primarily within a firm which is being drafted by the finance department. That's why it is also called as financial budget, because it talks about the movement of money during the entire activity, planned activity. So that is also a functional budget. So every function, when planned well in advance, definitely a firm will be drafting a budget for, maybe separately for each of the activity or together for all the activities. When it is prepared in wholesome together, it is called as a master budget. Okay, I repeat, when the functional budgets are clubbed together, prepared as a whole, as one plan for a firm, not separately taking off different functions, that is called as a master budget. Of course, every department will be given with a function. Every functional department will be having a budget separately for them. But when we put all these together in a macro perspective, in the perspective of a firm as such, that will be called as a master budget. So it is actually the combination of all the functional budgets of a firm. So that's a basic difference between a master budget and a functional budget. In case of functional budget, each function is taken separately, and then each department plan their activities accordingly, but it is actually a piece, one part of the master budget. Once everything is being put together, we call that as a master budget. Now the next one which we have put here is the fixed or flexible budget. Now in case, as the name indicates, in case of fixed budget, that's a rigid one. Now you might ask, why should a firm have a fixed and a flexible budget? Basically, fixed budget is the one which we will not change very often according to the changes in the market conditions. Right. But flexible budget is the one which is reflective of the external environment. It is reflective. Suppose the firm is facing difficulty in selling its product in the market, maybe in the current situation. Now almost every country is going into a recession mode. So if that is the case, then there can be changes incorporated in order to accommodate the present condition into a firm's budget. Such budgets will be called as flexible budget. Those budgets which have flexibility in itself to incorporate the changes that is happening within the economy. But fixed budget, maybe it is kept as a benchmark. Right, a firm will draft, okay, in ideal condition, this should be the way the firm should plan for its activities. That's what that's what being communicated through a fixed budget. It's not prone to frequent revisions. It's more or less rigid budget. Right, but it is prepared for a period. After the close of the period, might be you will revise it based, you will plan for the next period based on the changes that has happened in the previous period. So that is done. But a fixed budget is more or less fixed, prepared in a rigid format for a fixed period. That period would be there, maybe a quarter, maybe a year, as you call as an annual budget. Right? So fixed or flexible is another category. Now, going with the long-term or short-term budget. Okay. Now, when we are talking about long-term or short-term budget, as the name indicates, if it is beyond 1 year, if it is for a longer period, as we call strategic plan. When a firm is planning for what should be its position in a 10-year period, it will not lay down for a 1-year plan. It might be for 10 years strategic plan. Likewise, for 5-year plan. Likewise, when it is beyond 1 year, all such plans are called as long-term plans. And short-term plans up to 1 year, less than 1 year, up to 1 year. Quarter, a plan, a budget for a quarter is a short-term plan. Definitely, your short-term plan will be drafted from your long-term strategic plan. Because if you have to achieve your objectives in a 10-year period as per your plan, that should be brought down to your different short-term plans. So when your budget is beyond 10 years, beyond 1 year, it will be called as long-term plan, and short-term is normally up to a period of 1 year. Maximum an annual plan, not beyond that. Okay, so these are the basic classification of a budget, the one which I put in dark blue color, the basic classification of budgets. So functional budget, which talk about planning for various functions of the organization. And you might ask me, if a budget, is it a quantitative or qualitative concept? Definitely a budget is a quantitative aspect. Everything which can be expressed in numbers, that's what normally you plan for. You don't put qualitative terms into a budget. Always the quantitative aspects are being brought to budget so that people can think correctly and plan and plan your action accordingly. Right. So the first dark blue, the first one which talks about different functions, when the target, when the plan of action, when the estimate is with respect to different functional areas of an organization, those are called as functional budget. When all the functions put together for an organization as a whole, when the plan is kept for the organization as a whole, that is called as the master budget. And we talked about a flexible and a fixed budget. A fixed budget is more or less very rigid. It's not subject to frequent changes. But a flexible budget can accommodate the changes that is happening in the market. Okay, the availability of raw material, maybe sometimes it's very it's very scarce, some of the raw materials, because of the changes. Suppose if we are going with agricultural products, because of the climatic changes, there can be shortage of some raw materials. Accordingly, you will come down with your production aspect, which should be reflected in your selling and distribution aspects. So all these aspects can be taken care in a flexible budget. Every organization will be having a flexible budget, otherwise called as a contingency plan. See now, the last year, almost everyone had a fixed budget for the annual budget for the year. They were planning so much of sales volume or sales turnover and profit volume, all these. But all that needed to be changed because of some unforeseen condition like this pandemic. So that definitely will be brought to the flexible budget category, not to the fixed. The fixed remains to be more or less rigid for that quarter, indicating an ideal condition. Okay. In an ideal condition, if everything remains favorable, the firm is going to do like that. That's actually the substance or the core idea behind a fixed budget. Now, long-term or short-term, as the name indicates, long-term is basically your strategic plan, an estimate of your future, what you want to achieve maybe in 5 to 6 years or 10 years. It's a long-term period, beyond 1 year. Whereas a short-term budget, generally it is later, it can start from 1 month, quarter, or maximum up to 1 year. So that those category will be brought under short-term budgets. Now, the one which I put at the lighter one, that the light blue below the first line, all these are different concepts of planning and preparation of budgets. Okay, in general case, a budget would be based on your previous year's performance. If you're a new firm, of course, you will look into the performance of other competitors in the market, or you will depend upon the opinion of the experts, all these. But otherwise, generally, your next year budget will be based on the previous year. Or your current budget definitely will be reflective of the performance of your company in the previous quarter or maybe previous year. Right, that is the concept of a budget. But the one which we are going to discuss, which is zero-based budgeting, as the name indicates, it is not looking into the previous period while you are drafting your plan for the upcoming quarter or maybe upcoming year. You don't look into the previous performance. You start as if you are a new firm. Maybe you have been operating in the firm for 10 years, but you start preparing your budget as if you are very new to the market. That is, you don't take no stock of, or you don't follow the previous path for the current year. Maybe a firm will be looking into it, will be studying it, it will take its experience based on the previous performance, all that. But when you are planning, you start as if you are starting in day one. You're very new to the market. So the primary benefit of zero-based budgeting is your previous performance will not affect your present performance or present plan. It in a way, it helps you to start fresh. Even if you had some problem in your previous quarter, even if you had some trouble with your plan for the last quarter, for the last year, you try to keep it away, manage it in that period itself, and you are going to start a new thing which does not have any connection with the previous one. It is very important for those firms, which is going to operate very fresh in a new market, or maybe after a strategic decision like merger or acquisitions. In some of the cases, you will have some periods which you don't want to affect your future period or future activities. So you will just try to eliminate that by preparing a zero-based budget, which means zero-based means it does not have a base year comparison. That's actually the real meaning of it. You do not have a base year for comparison. That's why we say that zero base. When I say see where the Sensex, we talk about Sensex, it's actually an index which talks about the stock market movement. And even today's stock market movement will have a comparison of the base year. In this case, it is 1978. Right. But in case of comparison, you are always talking about how far you have improved from 1978. What are the corrections that has happened over this period? How are we planning for future based on the previous period? That will not happen in case of a zero base. You are not going to make a comparison from the previous period. So the such type of budgets are called as zero base budgeting. Now, performance budgeting is another concept. Okay, performance budgeting is a concept where you are evaluating your firm's performance based on the objectives drafted by you. It can be short-term objectives or it can be even the long-term objectives. You're looking at based on your budget is actually planning based on your performance. Suppose, say for example, suppose if you feel that you want to be the leader in the next market leader in the next 5 years. So every now and then you will be evaluating what's your sales performance in the market, because if you want to become the market leader, you have to keep improving your sales volume. So your performance in the market is being evaluated. And see, when you see that, yes, your sales volume is not up to what you have planned, that is going to be incorporated in your next year's budget. You will keep your target little more higher because your aim is to become the leader in the next 5 years. So you know that, yes, if I have to become the leader, maybe I will have to go with 10,000 as my turnover or 20,000 as my sales turnover. So I would be planning my sales. I would be setting my target. I will make my estimate of my sales based on my target. So I'm every year, every quarter, I will evaluate my sales turnover. I will set the target accordingly. Or maybe I'll take more measures like sales promotional measures to increase my sales. Or I will try to place my price in such a way that I can increase my volume in this planned period. So my performance is the core thing which will be directing my budget theme. Right. So such type of budget, it is based on the performance with respect to the objectives set by the firm. Suppose if a firm has planned that it will have operations all over in India. So your budget, the budget being set by the firm, will be planning like the first quarter we will be operating in southern states. Then in the next quarter we will be starting our operation in the central part of India. And towards the last quarter we are planning our operations in the northern part, because our objective is covering the entire India as our market. So likewise, when our budget is being evaluated based on our performance with respect to the objectives set by our firm as a whole, maybe long-term or short-term, such type of budgeting is called as performance budgeting. Okay. The next one is little more micro in perspective. Okay, performance budgeting we talk about based on objectives, so it's macro. In order to achieve these objectives, every single activity of the firm should be evaluated and there should be a plan of action for it. When we plan like that, that will be called as activity-based budgeting. Every single activity of the firm is scrutinized to ensure that it is aligned with the objectives. So our budget, our plan, it will be in such a way that Every activity, big or small, will be planned very correctly to achieve the objectives, to achieve our object. When we plan like that in a micro perspective, we call such type of budgeting as activity-based budgeting. In fact, in most of the budgets, okay, in most of the budget, when we are talking about functional budgets, activity, the concept of activity-based budgeting will come, because functional itself is a division. In each functional budget, every activity associated with that particular plan function will be planned very correctly. If that is the case, that is actually the activity-based budget. You will plan how much of the sales, how much of a sample to be distributed as part of your sales promotion measures. Maybe if it is your budget for human resource planning, you will say how many peoples to be appointed in this quarter. You will also look into what is the actual turnover, labor turnover for this quarter. Likewise, every small activity is being planned that will be brought under the category of activity-based budgeting. Now going with the next one, rolling budget. Rolling budget, the only keyword which you have to remember is it is a continuous budget. Right? It is no, as you say, no, one budget leads to other. The changes that needs to be incorporated in one budget leads to the drafting of the new budget. So it's actually a continuous budget, which is normally short term in nature. It's short term because when you find that, yes, there are some changes, some improvements. Now we have a pandemic period. Still, some of the firms are trying to improve their performance. So there is some kind of improvement. So that will be reflected in the next short-term budget. You're trying to improve from there. You will revise your plan accordingly. You will put a little more higher target and then you move ahead. So a rolling budget is like it is a continuous one. You will incorporate all immediate changes into the next budget, because you know that a budget is prepared for a period. And when it is prepared for a period, maybe a quarter, it is pretty difficult for you to bring change into that one. So you will prepare a rolling one, which is a continuous. It uses the concept of flexible budget. It is continuous. Flexible budget is actually a concept which takes into care the changes that is happening in the current perspective. Likewise, the same concept. It is continuous. It takes care of the changes that is happening. So such type of budgets are called as a rolling budget. Right. So in our today's class, we were talking about budget. So I started my class by discussing budget as a management control tool, again, which is used by cost accountants to have a better control in the cost factor. Okay, it is actually an estimate, a plan of action which is quantitatively expressed to achieve our objectives in the best possible way. Great. And we also talked about different types of budgets. Primarily, budgets can be classified into functional budget, master budget, flexible, or as I say, fixed budget. And if we classify based on time, it would be long-term or short-term. Then the rest is concepts which are used for the preparation of budget. One is zero base, when you do not have a base year when you do not use a base year for your comparison, you call that budget as a zero base budgeting. Performance budget, when you are when the budget is prepared considering your performance with respect to your objectives. We discuss that concept as performance-based budgeting. When every activity in your firm is planned minutely, we call that concept of preparation of budget as activity-based budgeting. And the last one is when there is a continuous reflection, continuous changes which is being brought in your budget for short period. That concept is called as a rolling budget or a continuous budget, which help you to take control of your activities, taking care of the external environment. So these are the basic concepts which we will have to discuss before we start. We actually start with preparation of our budget. As I said in our previous discussion, we will be starting with preparation of cash budget. It is part of functional budget. Okay, it is part of functional budget, and there are different ways of preparing cash budget, which we will be discussing in our tomorrow's class.